My name is Brandy Morgan. I'm 36 years old, and this is the story of how I spent $57,000 building a dream for a family that never loved me, only to burn it all to the ground, piece by piece, on the night they thought they'd won. It was Christmas Eve in Denver, Colorado. The kind of cold that stings your fingers through gloves. I stood outside on a ladder, hanging the final strand of LED lights along the newly renovated patio of the house I grew up in, the house I had just poured most of my life savings into restoring. The garden lights flickered beautifully under the frost, and I was proud, even though no one ever said thank you. Inside, I had slow Christmas jazz playing softly while trays of cookies browned in the oven. The scent of cinnamon, butter, and pine needles floated through the air like something out of a holiday magazine. The whole house looked like a dream, because I had made it that way. Then I heard it. The sound that would break me into 1,000 pieces and rebuild me into someone else. Vanessa's voice. My older sister, sharp as glass, sliced through the hallway as she spoke to our mother. I had left the kitchen window cracked, trying to cool the room. Instead, their words came through like a slap. That girl Brandy, if Mom doesn't make her cover the entire renovation cost this time, then what was even the point? Silence. Then my mother's voice followed, soft but icy. Don't worry, Vanessa. Everything has already been arranged. The estate, the house, the money, all of it will go to you. Brandy's just temporary. I froze. Hands trembling around the string of lights still warm from the bulbs. Vanessa laughed, smug and cruel. Let her think she's doing something noble, fixing up this dump. Then we cut her off for good. Who wants a construction worker in the family anyway? She wears steel-toed boots and tracks sawdust everywhere. God, it's embarrassing. She'll die alone, my mother added with a chuckle. She's so desperate for approval, it's pitiful. Thinks a few Christmas cookies and some fresh paint will buy her our love. I don't know how long I stood there, staring through that window, blinking as my world shattered. The lights I had strung blurred in my eyes. I felt stupid. Humiliated. I had been funding their lives like a fool. Thousands on kitchen renovations. New plumbing. Custom furniture. I even paid the taxes when Mom conveniently forgot. And now I was nothing to them. Just a gullible ATM with a drill. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stepped down from the ladder, walked into the kitchen, and glazed the cookies. Because something inside me had cracked clean down the middle, and the cold that entered wasn't sadness. It was precision. Quiet, calculated fury. They had no idea what they had just done. That night, I moved like a ghost through the house. Smiling politely. Answering when spoken to. But I listened. Closely. I studied the way Vanessa texted with one hand while sipping wine. I noticed how my mother always looked slightly nervous when I walked into the room, as if I might overhear something again. I had spent 36 years trying to be the good daughter. The one who fixed broken floorboards. Who showed up to parent-teacher conferences for Vanessa's kids. Who made extra trays of food at Thanksgiving because Deborah can't cook anymore. But it was never enough. And it never would be. That night, I realized something bone deep: I had no family. Just users. The next day, I started paying attention to things I had ignored before. Like the unfamiliar gray Mercedes parked a few blocks from the house on weekday afternoons. Or how my mother always flipped her phone face down when I walked into the kitchen. She'd flash that forced smile. Brandy, you tracked mud in again. I didn't answer. I just noted it down. 3 nights later, after everyone had gone to bed, I slipped into her office. There was a password on her computer now. Funny, there never used to be. But it only took 3 tries to crack it. My own birth date. Inside were dozens of emails. To a man named Charles Bentley. Photos of dinners in Napa. Trips to Seattle. Hotel bookings. Dozens of sweet, intimate messages. My stomach twisted. Charles wasn't just anyone. He was my father's best friend from college. His business partner. The man who used to bounce me on his knee when I was 5. And now? My mother's lover. Every luxury trip I thought was for family bonding? It was for her and Charles. Paid with my money. The money I earned crawling through dusty attics, hauling lumber, and managing overpriced subcontractors for 15 hours a day. I felt physically sick. And still, I didn't confront her. Because I was already planning something much bigger. That night, I installed recording devices in the kitchen, the living room, and her office. A camera behind the Grand Canyon photo, the one she always bragged about. My hands didn't even shake. Over the next few weeks, I recorded everything. And I mean everything. Whispers about moving the estate into Vanessa's name. Discussions about transferring the house. Laughing about how they tricked me into signing contracts with my name missing from the ownership paperwork. I sat there night after night, replaying their voices. Their smug tones. Their cruelty. And I waited. Because Vanessa's 40th birthday was coming up. A massive celebration. Of course, I was the one organizing it, again. But this time, every tablecloth, every flower arrangement, every chilled bottle of champagne would be for me. My stage. My war room. My revenge. And the best part? They'd never see it coming. I spent the next 6 weeks preparing like I would for a high-stakes construction project, except this time, I wasn't building a house. I was building an execution. Every day, I played my role perfectly. The helpful daughter. The underappreciated little sister. Always polite, always available. I made spreadsheets of gift ideas. Designed personalized invitation cards. I even booked a live string quartet for the dinner, because Vanessa loved elegance. All the while, I was organizing evidence, backing up files, and building a legal firewall so tight that nothing, and no one, could escape. I went through every receipt from the house renovations. The custom cabinetry, the imported tiles, the lighting fixtures. I contacted every contractor, confirmed every payment. The total came to $57,450, all from my account. I built an invoice labeled, "Payment in Full," for the family that used me. Each night, after they'd gone to bed, I'd return to my little workshop in the backyard, the one I had renovated with my own hands. I'd turn on the radio, sharpen my pencils, and sketch. But not blueprints for buildings this time. This was a different kind of architecture, the structure of revenge. I categorized the recordings and labeled them. Audio clip A1, Vanessa mocking my profession and calling me a boot-wearing burden. Audio clip B3, Mom detailing how she planned to sign over the family estate to Vanessa. Audio clip C2, Conversations with Charles about clearing the paperwork before Brandy gets wise. I bought a tablet, uploaded everything, and then duplicated it to a USB, a cloud drive, and even burned DVDs, just in case. You don't spend a life in construction without learning redundancy is everything. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a lawyer. Not one of those "will call you back next week" types either. I went for a high-powered estate attorney from downtown Denver. I told her everything. She didn't flinch. Apparently, betrayal was a recurring theme in her line of work. "This is all legal," she said as she flipped through the evidence. "They used your money. Lied. Hid documents. If you wanted to, we could sue." "No," I told her. "They don't deserve a courtroom. They deserve an audience." Vanessa's party was going to be held at our house, of course. She wanted the whole neighborhood to see how successful she was. The irony was blinding. The very home she was bragging about was built with the sweat and money of the sister she planned to erase. Me. I printed my receipts. Copies for everyone, even the caterer. I drafted a letter to every guest, just in case someone tried to spin the story. I even added QR codes to the documents that linked to the audio files. It was cold. It was clean. It was flawless. But even as I buried myself in this plan, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something deeper. I would lie awake sometimes and stare at the ceiling, asking myself, how did it come to this? Was I really this blind? Or was I just desperate to be loved? That question hurt more than anything they ever said about me. Because the truth is, I was desperate. I spent years fixing, building, giving, because I thought love was something you earned. That if you showed up enough times, people would see your worth. But that's not how it works. Especially not with people like Deborah and Vanessa. To them, love was leverage. And I was just a convenient investment they could throw away once the returns dried up. 1 week before the party, my mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Brandy," she said, "I know you've been working hard. I just want to say, thank you." I almost laughed. But I didn't. I just smiled. "You're welcome, Mom. It's all for the family." She beamed, thinking I'd finally learned my place. But she didn't know the files were already encrypted and waiting. That the guest list she approved had hidden cameras watching every angle. That even her best friend Claire, who she gossiped with about me for years, was about to receive a customized packet marked, "Truth has a price tag." By the time the final preparations were done, I had transformed the entire dining room into something out of a luxury magazine. Golden flatware, silk napkins, candelabras, crystal wine glasses, the works. I had even hand-carved a new centerpiece for the table, a walnut and cherrywood sculpture of a phoenix. They thought it was symbolic of Vanessa's rebirth at 40. It wasn't. It was mine. The night before the party, I went out to the patio alone. The lights I'd hung weeks ago still flickered gently under the snowfall. I wrapped myself in a coat, holding a mug of cider, and whispered aloud, "This is the last night I will ever be your fool." I meant every word. And when the morning sun rose on Vanessa's big day, I put on a pearl necklace, the one Dad gave me when I turned 18, and walked into the kitchen to bake the cake like nothing had changed. But everything had. Because I wasn't Brandy, the builder, the burden, the backup daughter. I was Brandy, the architect of reckoning. The day of the party arrived like a perfectly staged play, and I was the quiet stagehand with a matchbook in her pocket, waiting for Act 3. I woke early, brewed my coffee, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I wore a slate-gray fitted suit, subtle gold earrings, and low heels. Not too flashy, not too humble. Just enough to blend in, until the moment I chose not to. Vanessa loved dramatic entrances, so everything had to be Instagram perfect. The caterers came early. The quartet tuned their instruments in the living room. Our mother bossed everyone around in her blood-red designer dress, barking orders like a general preparing for war. "Brandy, make sure the champagne is chilled, not frozen. And keep the cake in the pantry until I say so. Last time, it was too cold." "Of course, Mom," I said, even smiling. I adjusted the crystal glasses she complained about last week. Every time she gave me a new order, I whispered in my head, "Keep going. This is the last time you'll ever speak to me like that." By 5 o'clock, guests began to arrive. Neighbors. Distant cousins. Vanessa's fake friends with their forced smiles and overpriced handbags. They gushed over the food, the setting, the decor, all things I had poured my soul and savings into. And they had the audacity to act like Vanessa had arranged it herself. "She really knows how to throw a party," one woman whispered to another near the fireplace. I heard it. I heard everything. And I took it all in with the same calm that I used when dealing with stubborn contractors. Wait. Don't yell. Don't flinch. Let them dig their own graves, you just hold the shovel. When Vanessa made her entrance, late, of course, she wore a floor-length gold gown, the kind that screamed, "Look at me." Her hair was pinned up, her diamond earrings swaying as she floated through the room, kissing cheeks and laughing like royalty. Her husband Bruce trailed behind her, gripping a bottle of rare Bordeaux like it was a trophy. I kept my distance, sipping my drink, smiling when necessary. At exactly 6:45 p.m., I slipped away to the hallway and retrieved my bag. Inside was the tablet, the copies, the USBs, and the envelope marked, to be opened in case of manipulation. I had tested everything that morning. The screen mirror function worked perfectly with the dining room's large smart TV, the one I installed myself and never got thanked for. I connected the tablet via Bluetooth, waited for the signal, and took a deep breath. 7 p.m. sharp. The string quartet stopped mid-song as I tapped my glass gently with a fork. The room turned toward me, confused. Before we raise our glasses to celebrate Vanessa's milestone, I said, my voice steady, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about family and finances. My mother's smile faltered. Vanessa laughed, assuming I was making a sentimental toast. But then I tapped the tablet, and the television came to life. The first audio clip played. Vanessa's voice, loud and clear, let her pay for the house renovation, then cut her out of the will. Who wants a hard hat wearing embarrassment at family dinners? Gasps. My mother's voice followed, don't worry. The paperwork's ready. She thinks this house is hers. She doesn't know she's just funding it for us. The room froze. I looked directly at my mother and sister. Still want that toast? My father, Edward, stood in stunned silence. I had not told him a word of this ahead of time. I had debated it for weeks, but in the end, I decided he needed to hear it the same way I did, raw, unfiltered, impossible to deny. The second clip began, the ones with Charles Bentley. My mother's voice, giddy and breathless, describing hotel plans, asset transfers, and dreams of Oregon. Once the estate is signed over to Vanessa, we disappear. Let Brandy rot in Denver. She'll never know what hit her. I paused the video. My father sat down, slowly, like the air had been knocked out of him. I turned to him gently. I found the emails, Dad. The financial transfers. The hotel photos. She used my money. And she used your trust. My mother reached out suddenly. Brandy, this is cruel. This isn't the time or place. Exactly, I said, stepping back. You said the same thing when you lied to my face for 10 years. Vanessa's expression turned from disbelief to panic. This isn't happening, she whispered, turning to Bruce, who was already typing frantically on his phone. I smiled, calm. Don't bother, Bruce. Everything is backed up. Cloud, USB, email. My attorney has the full package. Even if you sue, I win. Then I opened the envelope. I pulled out the spreadsheet, every dollar I had spent on the house. Itemized. Signed. With receipts. $57,450, I said aloud. All mine. Not reimbursed. Not acknowledged. But used to build the very house you were going to take from me. Edward finally stood up, his hands trembling. Deborah, he said, voice breaking. How long? She started sobbing. It wasn't like that, Ed. I felt trapped. You were always working. You stole from your daughter. You mocked her with our best friend. You lied to me every day. He looked at me, and I swear something inside him cracked too. I didn't know, Brandy, he said, tears now pooling in his eyes. I didn't know. I nodded. Now you do. And then I turned to the guests, all of them frozen in stunned silence, unsure where to look. Thank you for coming, I said. You can stay for cake. Or you can leave with the truth. Either way, this party is over. No one moved. So I moved first. I walked to the front door, opened it wide, and let the wind rush in, the same way it had on Christmas Eve when I first heard their betrayal. I want everyone out, I said. Now. My voice didn't rise. I didn't scream. I didn't have to. Because in that moment, I wasn't the builder anymore. I was the demolition crew. The guests filed out like ghosts, murmuring apologies they didn't mean. Some avoided my gaze. Others gave me pitiful glances, as if they couldn't decide whether I was the villain or the hero. But I didn't care. Their opinions meant nothing to me now. I closed the door behind the last guest, the wind slamming it shut like a final punctuation mark on decades of silence. The house was a mess, crystal glasses half full of untouched champagne, smeared plates on linen runners, and the echo of betrayal still hanging heavy in the air. I turned back toward my so-called family. Vanessa stood like a statue, her glittering gown now seeming absurd and gaudy under the harsh kitchen light. Her husband Bruce was trying desperately to delete files off his phone, still thinking he could salvage something. And my mother, Deborah, sat slumped in the armchair, mascara streaking down her cheeks, red dress wrinkled like an abandoned costume. I walked past them and began gathering my things, slowly, deliberately. My laptop. My file folders. The tablet. The backup USBs. I placed them neatly in my bag, the way I always organized my tools at a job site after a long, honest day of work. Brandy, my mother whimpered. Please. You're tearing this family apart. I stopped, turned to her. No, Mom. You tore this family apart years ago. You just got away with it until now. She blinked at me, stunned. Not by the words, but by the fact that I had finally said them. Vanessa lunged toward me then, not physically, but with her words. What do you want, Brandy? You want an apology? You want the house? Fine. Take it. Take it all. Just stop pretending you're some innocent martyr. You think you're so righteous? I tilted my head. No. I just know what I'm worth now. And it's not measured by how much abuse I can swallow from people who share my blood. Bruce finally looked up. You're bluffing. No judge will side with you. It's all just hearsay and family drama. I laughed, short, sharp. Bruce, you're a tax attorney. I build things for a living. You have no idea how thorough I can be. Every cent has a receipt. Every call was legal. Every asset transfer? I have copies. You should know that. I used your own firm's template to prepare the evidence. He went pale. I walked to the door again, this time not to open it, but to close the chapter. I want all of you out of this house by morning, I said. This is no longer your home. Vanessa sputtered, you can't be serious. But I was. My attorney had already sent a cease and desist to my mother and Vanessa that morning. They'd find it in their inboxes once they had Wi-Fi again. Starting tomorrow, I said quietly, all communication goes through my lawyer. You show up here again, I file for a restraining order. My mother's face twisted, her grief turning ugly. You think you can live alone forever, Brandy? You think this makes you strong? You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. I stepped forward, and for the first time in my life, I looked her in the eye not with fear or longing, but with clarity. No, Mom. The only thing I regret is not walking away sooner. I didn't wait for a reply. I went to my old room, packed my business documents, the custom tools I'd stored in the closet, a few keepsakes that meant something to me, not to them. A photo of me and Dad from when I was 10. My childhood blanket. And a walnut jewelry box I carved during my apprenticeship. I left everything else behind, the furniture I'd paid for, the appliances I'd installed, even the handmade dining table I once believed would host holidays full of laughter and love. They didn't deserve any of it. At dawn, I loaded everything into my truck and drove away. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. I moved into a high-rise apartment downtown, a smaller space, but clean and mine. It had tall windows that let the sunlight pour in, and a balcony overlooking the Platte River. That first morning, I stood barefoot on the cold floor, holding a mug of coffee, breathing in air that wasn't poisoned by manipulation or guilt. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. I changed my phone number. Locked down all my social media. Closed every door they could use to find me. The emails came anyway, first from Deborah, then Vanessa. The first ones were angry. Then they turned desperate. Then manipulative again. Brandy, you're being cruel. We're still your family. Bruce was just doing what I asked. Vanessa didn't mean it. Come home. Let's fix this. I ignored everyone. Finally, I sent a single, cold reply to my mother. All further communication must go through my attorney. Do not contact me again. Then I blocked her. Days turned into weeks. I rebuilt my schedule around myself for once. No more last-minute favors. No more guilt-tripped dinners. I started focusing on new projects again, furniture design, boutique commercial renovations. Clients who respected my work. Colleagues who valued my input. At night, I'd sit in my living room surrounded by blueprints and wood samples, letting the hum of the city replace the silence that used to ache like a wound. There was no satisfaction in what I'd done, just peace. And sometimes that's all you can ask for when your family becomes your enemy. But peace is priceless. 3 weeks after the birthday blow-up, I received a phone call I didn't expect, from the only person I hadn't heard from during the storm. My father. Edward Morgan. The quiet, retired economics professor who had once built a life on spreadsheets and honor codes. He had been a ghost during the family unraveling. Not out of guilt or complicity, I think, but because he didn't know how to face the weight of the truth. His voice, when he finally called, was low and cautious. Brandy, he said, as if tasting the name for the first time in years. I need to talk to you. Just us. No one else. I didn't answer right away. My fingers hovered over the phone. My new apartment was calm, morning light spilling across my drafting table, the smell of fresh coffee in the air. Did I want to risk letting the past back in? But then I heard something in his voice. Not pleading. Not pity. Regret. So I agreed. We met at a small cafe on the edge of Sloan Lake, far from the neighborhoods of betrayal and champagne lies. He was already there when I arrived, nursing a cup of black coffee, wearing the same beige coat he'd had for years. His hair had more gray in it now, and his eyes looked like someone who hadn't slept since the night I pressed play at Vanessa's party. Hi, Dad, I said, sliding into the chair across from him. He looked up slowly. You look good. I feel free, I replied, because it was true. He nodded, pulled a thick envelope from his bag, and placed it in front of me. This is everything I didn't want to believe. Inside were documents, estate paperwork, property transfers, financial records. Things I had never seen before. He had hired a private investigator and an attorney to look into every document my mother and sister had touched for the last 10 years. And it was worse than I thought. They had used my name on paperwork I never signed. They had backdated renovation authorizations, forged notations on invoices. They had even funneled some of my deposits into a holding account under Vanessa's name. It was a heist, a long, cold, domestic heist. And I had been the mark. I'm sorry, Dad said, his voice rough. I don't know how I let it happen. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I was blind. I failed you. I stared at the stack of proof. My stomach didn't turn anymore. I wasn't shocked. I was validated. I looked up at him. I don't want anything, Dad. I'm not here to fight over inheritance. I just want to be left alone. But he shook his head. No, Brandy. You need to let me fix what I can. I'm rewriting the will. You'll inherit everything. Vanessa and Bruce are out. Completely. I should have seen what they were becoming long ago. I took a deep breath. Let it settle in me. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't victory. It was correction. It was the first time someone in my family chose to take my side, not because they had to, but because it was right. If that's what you need to do, then do it, I said. But let your lawyer talk to mine. I'm not coming back into the mess. He nodded. Understood. We sat in silence for a while. But this silence wasn't like the others. It wasn't toxic or weaponized. It was peaceful. Healing. He told me about Oregon, how he planned to move to a small coastal town, teach part-time at a community college, maybe start gardening. He had sold the house. The house I had poured my life into. And you know what? I didn't feel a thing. That chapter was already dead to me. You're always welcome to visit, he said. If you want. I didn't promise anything. But I didn't say no. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter. Not because I was getting anything back, but because I finally saw the man my father had once been, breaking free from the same manipulation I had endured for years. Maybe, in his own way, he'd been just as trapped. Over the next few months, my life settled into a quiet rhythm I had never known before. I poured myself into my work. I took on projects that inspired me, boutique office spaces, custom furniture for downtown firms, even a community center in Aurora that needed someone with heart more than prestige. My phone didn't ring with emergencies anymore. My inbox didn't overflow with demands disguised as family requests. The silence was no longer something to fear, it was freedom. I built a small woodworking studio in my apartment. My neighbors thought I was eccentric, but the sound of sanders and saws brought me peace. I started designing my own line of minimalist furniture, handcrafted, sustainable, meaningful. The kind of pieces I used to dream of making before I was sucked into my family's financial drama. And I slept. Deeply. No more waking up in panic at 3 a.m., wondering if I had forgotten to pay someone's bill or schedule a last-minute install for Mom. It was just me now. Just Brandy. And I was enough. The first thing I built for myself in my new apartment wasn't a bed frame or a coffee table, it was a drafting desk. I crafted it from reclaimed cherry wood, rich and warm, with grains that twisted like stories across the surface. I sanded it by hand, coated it in linseed oil, and carved a small message under the drawer, "No one owns you anymore." Every morning, I brewed fresh coffee and opened the balcony doors, letting the sounds of downtown Denver hum around me like a new kind of music, one that didn't come with demands or fake smiles. The world felt different now, clearer, like my life had finally shaken off a long fog. For the first time, I wasn't building for anyone else. I wasn't trying to win approval or prove my worth with wood and nails. I was just existing. Fully. Authentically. I began sketching designs for a personal project I'd dreamed of for years but never dared begin, a mobile cabin. A self-sufficient, solar-powered, wood-paneled haven I could tow across the country. A symbol of freedom. Of self-sufficiency. Of never needing to rely on anyone again. I poured my energy into it like a woman possessed. I mapped out dimensions, sourced ethically reclaimed timber, researched off-grid systems, and built a construction schedule. I would do every bit of it with my own hands. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to mark this new chapter with something real. Meanwhile, my past still tried to reach me, but it couldn't get through the walls I had built. Emails came from Vanessa, pathetic, manipulative things. At first, they were condescending. "Brandy, we both said things we didn't mean. Let's be adults. Let's talk." Then desperate. "Bruce and I are struggling. We could really use your help with the taxes. Please." Then angry. "You think you're better than us now? You'll never have what I have. You'll always be alone." I forwarded each one to my lawyer without reading past the first sentence. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I wasn't even mad. Just indifferent. The way you feel about a movie you used to love but now realize was poorly made. And Mom? She went quiet. After a few weeks of ignored voicemails, she stopped trying. Whether it was out of shame or arrogance, I'll never know. And I no longer cared to. The world kept turning. And I kept building. I began to take walks on weekends, no destination, no checklist. Sometimes I wandered into small bookstores or artisan cafes, places I never had time for when I was stuck in the grind of being the family's unpaid servant. I even started talking to people again. Slowly. Cautiously. There was an older woman who ran a leather shop on Larimer Street, Marge, who taught me how to tool leather for my cabin seats. She had lost her husband to cancer and said something one day I never forgot. You can either let loss harden you or hollow you out just enough to make room for better things. I chose the second. One afternoon, as I was oiling a new piece of maple for my cabin, my phone buzzed. A text. From my father. Just a photo. A dining table he'd built, simple, sturdy, with clean edges and visible knots. Beautiful not because it was perfect, but because it wasn't trying to be. I'd like you to have it. For your new workshop. It's the best thing I've ever made. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I did. I'll save the best spot for it. Thank you, Dad. We didn't need to say anything else. We were finally learning how to love each other without words, without expectations, just quiet acts of creation and effort. Eventually, I visited him in Oregon. The drive took nearly 2 days, and when I arrived, he was sitting on the porch of a modest coastal house with a mug of coffee and the ocean at his feet. You came, he said, standing slowly. I wanted to see what you built, I replied. He gave me the tour, the workshop out back, the tiny herb garden, the library lined with books he finally had time to read. He showed me the projects he was working on, a rocking chair, a small desk, a jewelry box for no one in particular. That night, we sat on the porch together, wrapped in blankets, sipping tea and listening to the waves. He didn't bring up the past. Neither did I. We had both buried the worst of it and planted something else in its place. After that trip, something in me shifted. I stopped seeing myself as the woman who had been betrayed. And started seeing myself as the woman who had survived. I was no longer a reaction to someone else's cruelty. I was a creator. A builder. A woman who reclaimed her dignity and cut away everything that didn't nourish her soul. I started sharing photos of my work again online, carefully, under a professional brand. The orders started rolling in. I didn't chase validation anymore, but it found me anyway. And best of all? I never once doubted that I could do it. Because the woman who left that house on Vanessa's birthday wasn't the same woman who had walked in. She had burned her bridges. And from the ashes, she built something stronger than family. Herself. It's strange, really, the way peace doesn't make a sound. There's no grand finale, no dramatic score swelling in the background. Just mornings that don't begin with dread, and nights where sleep comes without bargaining with your past. That was my life now. Months had passed since the birthday fallout. Since the night I exposed everything and cut the final threads tying me to people who had used love like a weapon. My days were mine now, and every one of them felt like a breath I'd been holding for 36 years. The mobile cabin was nearly complete. Every board I sawed, every wire I laid, every panel I fitted was like a conversation with my younger self. The little girl who once thought she had to earn affection. The young woman who believed being useful was the only way to be wanted. The adult who sacrificed everything, just to be dismissed as embarrassing behind a closed door. I wasn't building a cabin anymore. I was building a monument. To survival. To transformation. To freedom. I stained the final pieces of wood under a sliver of late spring sun. When I stood back to look at it, the warm grain, the copper fixtures, the shelves lined with hand-tooled leather straps and custom storage, I felt something that had nothing to do with vengeance. Pride. Not in spite of what I'd lost, but because of what I chose not to lose, my integrity. One morning, I received a package at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a single envelope, and within it, a letter written in that tight cursive only my mother used. Brandy. I know you said not to contact you. I know you hate me. Maybe you always did. Maybe I always hated you too, in the way that mothers sometimes hate what they can't control. But I'm not writing for forgiveness. I'm writing because I have nothing else. Vanessa and Bruce are gone. They moved to Arizona last month. Bruce lost his license over a real estate scam. Vanessa still thinks the world owes her everything. Your father won't speak to me. I've lost the house. The friends. The face I wore for years. All that's left is silence. And shame. You were never the fool, Brandy. I was. For choosing control over connection. Status over sincerity. And I see that now. I hope you build something beautiful. Something I'll never be allowed to see. Deborah. I read the letter once, then folded it neatly, placed it in a wooden box on my shelf labeled, Closure. I never wrote back. Because that wasn't my job anymore, to fix, to heal, to respond. My responsibility was to myself now. My boundaries. My peace. And I was keeping them with the same care I gave to my chisels and sandpaper. Weeks later, I towed my completed cabin into the Oregon woods. Dad was waiting for me in his own truck, smiling like a man who had finally laid his ghosts to rest. We parked side by side at a bluff overlooking the water. The cliffs below churned with foaming waves, the sky bruised with the purple of twilight. He helped me unload a few things. A kettle. A camping chair. That dining table he made for me, now polished and proud inside the heart of the cabin. That night, we sat outside under the stars, a fire crackling between us. He passed me a glass of bourbon and didn't say much. He didn't need to. We had both found our way out of the trap. The one made not of wood or walls, but guilt, silence, and pretending. Think you'll keep driving? He asked after a while. Maybe, I said. But not to run from anything. Just to see what's next. He raised his glass. To what's next? I smiled. To what's mine? Now, when people ask me about my story, I tell them this. I spent most of my life giving everything to people who saw me as a resource, not a daughter or a sister. I paid for love, loyalty, and family with time, money, and my sense of self. And when I ran out? They tried to throw me away. But I didn't break. I built. I built a house. Then a plan. Then a life. And none of them live in it anymore. So if you're listening to this, maybe you're in the middle of your own quiet betrayal. Maybe you're the Brandy in your story. Let me tell you, you don't need to burn the house down. You just need to stop building theirs and start building your own. Let them sit in the ruin, while you rise in what you've made from the ashes. This has been Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. If Brandy's journey resonated with you, tell us why in the comments below. And remember, the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's building something they'll never be invited into. Subscribe for more stories that speak the truths too many people are afraid to say.